welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Or leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. It is Thursday, February 6th. Today, the average price of a gallon of milk in Wisconsin, $3.14. That's up 7 cents from yesterday. And the average price of a dozen large eggs in the state, $5.17. That is actually the same from yesterday. Since we're talking about eggs very briefly, headline reads from the Baltimore Banner, the heist of 100 eggs in Pennsylvania becomes a whodunit that police have yet to crack. They had fun with that. Yeah, somebody stole $100,000 eggs, from the back of a trailer in Pennsylvania. 4 days after the theft, they say they have no new leads. We are relying on leads from people in the community. We're hoping somebody knows something, and they will call us and give us some tips. Find out where they're making really big omelets.
I'm doing the calculations here. What was the average?
The average is $5.17 for a dozen eggs.
That is $43,000 worth of eggs.
So if you're in that area, someone walks up to you with a trench coat.
I was gonna say,
Psst, buddy.
Yeah, I got farm fresh eggs.
Extra large.
You like extra large? You like cage free?
Very busy show.
Who doesn't want organic?
Who doesn't want organic eggs? We have a very busy show coming up for you today. Andra Watkins is going to be joining us. She is a New York Times selling best author, and she also has had a Substack, and we spoke to her numerous times before the election, called How Project 2025 Will Ruin Your Life. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's gotten confirmed yet because the Democrats held up this hearing on Russell Vought, who was one of the main architects of Project 2025, who is now waiting to get the okay to become the head of the Office of Management and Budget. But we're going to be talking about Andra Watkins, about Russell Vought, and his particular brand of Christianity, which is very specific.
And some would say very extreme.
That too. And what this is going to mean, and this is going to play into something that the Trump administration just announced this morning to make sure that there's no anti-Christian bias in this country.
Yeah, I'll keep my mouth shut for that part.
Andra Watkins going to join us after the 10:30 news. Next hour, right after the 11 o'clock news, we're going to talk about the Wisconsin State Superintendent of Public Instruction race. There are 3 people in the running. The primary is February 18th. If you have not registered to vote yet, if you're not sure where to go vote, go to myvote.wi.gov, and that will give you all the information you need to know. There are essentially 2 Democrats running and 1 Republican, and there are some interesting details coming out about this Republican nominee.
Yeah.
And so we will share that with you after the 11 o'clock news. Weather and Wine with Brittney Merlot every Thursday at 11:20.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we got some weather coming on Saturday. I hope you guys were okay last night. I know you said it was horrible.
It was, I was saying to you this before we went there, I had not seen this many accidents, spinouts, cop cars on the freeway, and not even on the freeway, but just on the road, since there was a huge blizzard back in like 2014. And I mean, at one point I was driving like 13 miles an hour. Everyone was driving slow. No, and it wasn't.
Well, that's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those things with a snowstorm where all of a sudden some unconcerned citizen is driving through on his 4x4 truck. Everyone was going, because it didn't matter what kind of car you were driving last night. You just had to go slow and steady.
Well, at some point it hits you. I'm driving on ice.
Yep. Yeah. And that was the thing is, I thought at first it just felt like, oh, is there a strong? No, it's not. Oh no. But we all had the message, and it was tough. It took about an hour and 15 minutes to get home.
To get from Milwaukee to Kenosha.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you made it in one piece.
Me too.
At 11:30, we will be talking to Paul Noonan from the ACME Packing Company to talk all things sports. Of course, there is a big game on Sunday, I understand. There's also the Puppy Bowl, and then there has been some big news about the Bucks.
Yep.
And all kinds of feelings about some of the trades that the Bucks just made.
We'll be hearing from Paul, and I feel like we're going to be hearing from Calvin as well.
Calvin's a big Bucks fan.
Calvin is a big Bucks fan.
Calvin?
I have very strong opinions.
Stay tuned for Strong Opinions with Cal B.
Calviente.
Calvi,
He'll be getting spicy. He'll be getting spicy. And we will wrap it up as we always do with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it is how long has Louis Joy been in power?
Edition.
Yeah. Doesn't exactly flow necessarily.
That's going on a T-shirt. That's our next piece of merch.
Yeah, it's nice and short.
It's a long sleeve shirt.
Nice and short and to the point. But I wanted to start off with this from Wisconsin Public Radio. The byline goes to Anya van Wagtendonk. Elon Musk calling for cutting funds to Lutheran groups, including in Wisconsin. 2 Wisconsin groups have been named in a social media post baselessly accusing Lutheran charities of money laundering. Yeah, you heard that right. Elon Musk, co-president, unelected, tapped by President Trump to root out waste and inefficiencies, now targeting apparently a couple of religious groups here in Wisconsin. Do you remember former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn?
Absolutely.
Who was convicted?
Yes.
And then, of course, pardoned.
Patriot.
Michael Flynn posted that Lutheran organizations who get federal grants are committing money laundering. Elon Musk said he will rapidly shut down these illegal payments. There are federal grants totaling billions of dollars every year that go to nonprofits who provide a whole range of services that states do not provide. And this includes housing and food assistance. Michael Flynn's post included screenshots of some Lutheran groups that do get federal money, including Wisconsin Lutheran Child and Family Services, that's a Christian mental health care provider in Germantown, and Gunderson Lutheran Medical Foundation in La Crosse, a nonprofit that no longer has any affiliation with the Lutheran Church. But a spokesperson for Christian Family Services, which has been around for a long time, a really long time, their spokesperson says, we've been following the news with interest. We know that any money we get, whether public or private, is a privilege. They also say that they're working with officials of all parties. Any public funding we get through existing programs approved through the legislative process is used to improve access to health care for our patients. Hector Colon is the president of Lutheran Social Services of Wisconsin and Upper Michigan. He says in this article he responded to Elon Musk. He said that curbing wasteful government spending will support communities that need government money, but I told him he's got this one wrong. Lutheran Social Services has been operating for 143 years. It's been here a long time.
Yeah.
Serves about 30,000 people a year, providing youth development, mental health and substance use services, housing coordination, and other services. This is what jumped out at me. They have also helped resettle in the last 50 years about 11,000 refugees. That's what they're after. That's what Musk is after.
So I guess the next step is, Musk, you've made the statement, you've made the accusation. Where is your proof? I'd like show your work
of the money laundering.
Welcome to an edition of Show Your Work, because you can't just go making these accusations. These are liable accusations. You need to prove it. People can sue you over these kinds of accusations.
But in this instance, this is a nonprofit group. They are highly unlikely to take this to court.
I understand.
And
that.
these things get put out there on Twitter, and people swallow it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And accept it as gospel.
Yeah. This is another example of he doesn't like you. He gets to say whatever he wants, and it's just we didn't vote. Well, no, honestly, no.
I guess we did vote.
We did vote for this, and that's the thing is the president, Donald Trump, has the power to appoint whomever he wants. He appointed Elon to this. By the way, where is Vivek Ramaswamy?
Oh, he's out of Doge.
Oh, he is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My mistake. I was on vacation. But this is not just an Elon thing. This is a Donald Trump thing. He has appointed a man a feckless bully who has a chip on his shoulder the size of a South African emerald mine. But this is just going to keep happening. And once again, the question you asked yesterday and we've asked before, when's going to be your turn? When are you going to make the little boy Prince mad? And when is he going to come after you and say something awful?
Lutheran Social Services, again, has helped resettle almost 11,000 refugees over the last 50 years. That is another government project largely outsourced to nonprofits. This work, though, targeted under the Trump administration, and funding for Lutheran Social Services refugee work was suspended last month. Mr. Cologne, who again heads this agency, says not only is it the humanitarian thing to do for these individuals, there are economic benefits. Right now, there's a shortage of workers in America, and these people come here, love America, are on the path to citizenship. They're buying homes, having jobs, and contributing to the broader economy.
Example, Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah. Yes. Haitian immigrants helped that community.
Yep.
Michael Flynn, just as a reminder, again, who was convicted and then pardoned, Michael Flynn is a figurehead for the QAnon conspiracy movement. In other social media posts, he's criticized money that goes to Catholic charity groups. Mike Flynn is tied to Christian nationalist groups that often see mainline Protestant groups as anti-Christian. And this is something we've talked about before. Talking about those people who feel that they are protected.
Yeah.
Until you're not enough.
Yes.
You are not, I don't know, white enough?
Christian enough?
Christian nationalist enough?
A lover of Trump enough?
That too. This should make all of us sit up and go, this seems not good.
I already sat up and said that. I'm waiting for the people who voted for these wackadoodles.
David, I see you on the line. We'll take you on the other side. Stay with us. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Dr. Slide on the board, coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Right before the break, we were talking about Elon Musk now and Michael Flynn targeting two religious agencies in Wisconsin who do aid work. And I believe David from San Francisco wants to address something else. Thank you for your patience, David. What did you want to say?
Oh, thanks. I was just going to raise the old historical importance of Martin Luther as an opponent of the corruption in the old Catholic Church. He was a monk, if I remember right, and he discovered so much corruption that he nailed a list of the crimes to the cathedral door. And the one of the crime that the favorite crime of mine is indulgences. And that's one that Donald Trump is doing all the time. And it's pretty much similar to campaign donations. You can give money now and sin later.
Yep.
Pay now, sin later. And so Donald Trump is doing that all the time. And Opus Dei, who is basically who you're talking about, if you look up Opus Dei, they're pretty interesting because they are the perpetuation of the faith organization that is the old Inquisition name. And so, Flynn and the others that are working with this, in fact, do I remember right that 6 of the Supreme Court justices are now Catholic?
Yep.
And about 4 of them are Opus Dei types. So they're very interested in getting back to campaign contributions being legal. Or excuse me, you remember that ruling they did last summer? It's called Snyder, and it had to do with that a bribe is no longer a bribe.
Yeah.
It can be seen as a
Yeah.
gift.
Right.
Yeah. That's amazing, David, isn't it?
Sure. So, I mean, that's really what it's all about. These guys want to steal everything and then absolve themselves of sin. Pay now, sin later. And it's just kind of name of the game.
It's going to be interesting, David, and I would encourage you to stick around for Andra Watkins, who's going to join us again after the 10:30 news. At some point, there is going to be a clash between these hardcore Catholics sitting on the Supreme Court and the Mike Flynn Christian nationalist Russ Vogt, because those guys they love the Old Testament.
Yeah.
The New Testament, not so much.
It's too liberal.
Yeah, it's too many, too much turn the other cheek and welcome the stranger and treat people how you wanted to be treated. They're not so much into that. They're more about eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
They
like Smitey God.
They love a good smoting.
They like a good Smitey God. Thank you, David. Appreciate you checking in. You can always join us, too, at 855-752-4842. We don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but I think it's important to mention. For the first time in 64 years, Dick Durbin posted this morning. The CDC, for the first time in 64 years, the Centers for Disease Control has not published its weekly health alert. The CDC does this update every week to share what outbreaks there are, where they're happening, what the outbreak is. Now, the Trump administration doesn't like that critical information. So now doctors are pretty much in the dark about new outbreaks. This isn't good.
It's being retooled, Jane, to make sure that the CDC, when posting their weekly heads up, is posting the right information.
Yeah, not like we have a bird flu outbreak.
Nope.
Or anything to worry about there. That's all fine. Not that we have a tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas. That's all fine.
And polio is on its way back, I guess. Yeah, it's... I have a friend who works for an organization, and they told me that what they're doing currently, one of their big projects, is taking every piece of information from the Biden's CDC, copying it, storing it away for research purposes, because it's just going to be a matter of time before all that's scrubbed off the website. And I mean, who knows? Like shut it down and replace it with something bigger and better and grander. And I'll tell you the health news you need to know.
Exactly.
Shoot some light in your eyes. Drink some bleach. That's back.
It's all going to be. It's all good.
Medical advice from President Trump. Yeah. So
We're going to be talking to Dr. Laura Hanks in a couple of weeks.
yeah.
And I'm sure she will have opinions about this. This is important that our doctors and health agencies across the country have information about outbreaks of diseases
Mhm.
all around the country, all around the world.
Yeah.
We're a global place now. People travel, people fly.
Yeah. Pat Kreitlow's taking a little vacation time, and in his stead, Tuesday through Friday, Dr. Kristen Lyerly will be hosting the show, and I guarantee you we'll be talking about that. And if you can't catch the show 6 to 8, you can download it as a podcast. But as we all know, Dr. Kristen Lyerly and Dr. Hanks are going to give us some great information on what we need to do to protect ourselves, where we can go to find the information we need, because it is going to be out there. Just we can't, unfortunately, trust the government to be honest with us.
Dick Durbin, again, he is the one who put this out that for the first time in 64 years, CDC not doing a weekly update. Durbin says viruses don't take a break because the president slaps a gag order on our public health agencies. Outbreaks don't get contained because scientists are ordered to stop talking about them. Doctors, healthcare providers, the public all benefit from the release of critical and timely health information. Without it, we will see preventable suffering and death. And we can say the same about NOAA, the National Oceanic Administration. And Elon Musk's minions were at NOAA yesterday.
That frightens me.
We'll talk about that a little bit next hour at this same time with Brittney Merlot, our meteorologist here at Civic Media. Right now, news is coming up next, so stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Good morning, Andra. Can you hear me all right? We can't seem to hear you for some reason. Now I can.
Okay, maybe it just took it a second, but I still don't hear you in my headphones. I don't know what is wrong with these headphones.
Hey, Andra. Can you hold on. Can you hear me? Thumbs up.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, these aren't working.
Okay.
I don't know what the problem is, but hit it again. Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now. Can you hear?
Okay. I can hear you.
Perfect. All right, great. Excellent.
We got about a minute and a half, Andrew.
No, this did this with my phone yesterday and now here, and I don't understand what the problem is. But it says they're connected, but I don't hear anything through them.
Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Calby on the board. Coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us. Call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. You can leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Just a reminder, we have the February 18th primary is coming up less than 2 weeks from now. And then the general election, which will determine who is going to take the next spot on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, is April 1st. I know you hear it all the time, and I know you're tired of it. Yes, this is a very important election. This is going to affect all of us here in Wisconsin. So please get involved. Please be a voter. If you have not registered yet, if you're not sure if you're registered, if you have any questions about where you cast your ballot, what's going to be on your ballot, go to myvote.wi.gov. All you have to do is put in your address, and all the things you need will come right up. It's absolutely worth it. Very excited to have her back. It's been too long. Andra Watkins is a New York Times best-selling author and has a Substack called For Such a Time as This. Leading up to the election, Andra, you had your blog, your Substack was called How Project 2025 Will Ruin Your Life. So glad to have you
And
back.
now I could just write one called How Project 2025 is Ruining All Our Lives, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we're going to start there and talk about Russell Vogt. Now, the last I checked, the Democrats were kind of filibustering all night as he's going through his confirmation hearing. Russell Vogt is one of the architects of Project 2025. We told you this leading up to the election. We talked about this repeatedly and got rebuffed by all kinds of. I didn't hear anything about Project 2025. Donald Trump said he doesn't know about it, but he doesn't like everything in it. How he could know that if he didn't read it, I still don't understand. But let's talk about Russell Vogt, Andra, and his particular brand of Christianity, because that's what it is.
Yeah, I did an expose on him on my Substack last year when CNN broke the hidden camera video that a couple of people did with him to try to give him money and get him to talk about his worldview. So Russell Vogt is a very extremist Christian nationalist. He vibrates with it if you watch that video. He believes that America was founded as a Christian nation. He believes that everyone in America should live by biblical laws according to his interpretation of the Bible. And him being in a role like this would give him the ability to control much of the government to enforce that kind of law on everyone, whatever state you live in, red or blue. The laws of the federal government usurp your state laws. So if they make federal laws drawn from Russell Vogt's interpretation of the Bible and others in this administration with similarly extreme Christian nationalist views, it should be very alarming for every American to
And especially
be
for
living in a
people,
country like that.
and especially for people of faith.
Exactly. Although there are many people of faith who are fully for this. I grew up in Christian nationalism. We've talked about that before. I grew up in the Baptist strain of it. And so there are 3 different strains of it, and we can talk about those if you want to.
Sure.
The Baptist strain of it is very much the King James Version of the Bible is the only real version of the Bible. And Jesus was Baptist because John the Baptist baptized him. And so therefore, we're the only group that didn't come out of the corrupt, horrible, everybody's going to hell Catholic Church. And so therefore, we are the one true faith. So that is the Baptist version of Christian nationalism that's a sector of Christian nationalists are promoting. Then there's the Dominionist version of Christian nationalism, which largely comes from the charismatic, speaking in tongues, Pentecostal Church of God version of Christian nationalism. So they all believe in taking over the government and making it a Christian government. But each sector believes that all the rest of the other sectors are really going to hell and they're the only one true faith. So the Dominionists believe in prophets. They believe that God speaks through them, through their prophecies. But if you claimed that, Jane, they would say that was demons speaking to you through you because you're not one of them. So they utilize words like calling Kamala Harris Jezebel, calling people demon possessed, people who are fighting them are of Satan. They are the crowd that utilizes that kind of language and imagery more heavily because of their speaking in tongues and charismatic beliefs. Then we have the Catholic Opus Dei sect of Christian nationalism, which is a lot of what the Heritage Foundation, who authored Project 2025, are part of. J.D. Vance is part of that as well and is our vice president. So they believe that the Catholic Church is the only real faith and that everyone should go back to living under Catholic dogma and Catholic interpretation of the Bible. So those are the 3 sects. They're all probably pretty happy with Russ Vogt and what they see happening now, but at some point, one of the sects is going to decide that they need to be the real national religion, and they're going to fight amongst themselves about that.
You can only have one prophet, right? You can really only have one. I mean, there's only one. There's one prophet. So, again, at some point, I see a major conflict, especially between Russell Vogt's brand of Christianity and the Supreme Court Opus Dei version of Christianity are almost completely at odds with one another.
But they've worked together on these culture war issues for a long time. So, if they ever had power, then this is basically going back to a Middle Ages form of society where we had religious wars all the time. It was one of the reasons that the founders did not establish a Christian nation. Our nation was a product of the Enlightenment, but because we had hundreds of years of religious wars, and they were sick of that. So they established the United States to be something very different from that.
And very intentionally.
Very intentionally.
Very
yes.
intentionally.
But that's not what people in Christian nationalism learn. I was indoctrinated to believe that the U.S. was a Christian nation, that we needed to have Christian laws, that we needed to resist laws that disagreed with our interpretation of the Bible, that we couldn't compromise on anything that differed from our interpretation of the Bible, very much like they're doing today. So we have 50 years of this teaching. And, I probably wasn't radicalized when I was a child. I got out of it, but imagine people that I've grown up with who've sat in those same pews for 50 years and they've been given multiple off ramps and haven't taken them. So we're dealing with a lot of people who are incredibly radicalized by religion. And they look normal. They look like we do, but they're very radicalized by these things that they're taught in these churches.
The question I have, Andra, and this is, I'm asking you to paint a picture, make a speculation, and I don't want it to be too movie-esque, but
Oh, go ahead, Greg.
Well, the question is, okay, you have these three sects of these individuals who aren't exactly malleable on their values. Does it come to like a handshake of saying like, all right, you're in charge, or does it go to the other degree where it's like, oh, we're going to see three groups of people at war with each other until one person raises a flag and says, this is what America is?
No, we have examples of this extant right now on the globe, and I don't want to offend anyone who's listening who's Muslim, but the Sunni Muslims and the Shia Muslims have this kind of dynamic where each one thinks the other one is not a real Muslim. So, and they fight and struggle for control of things in their countries that are governed by Sharia law. So we have examples of that already on this planet where people are governed according to this, and various religious factions are fighting amongst themselves about who worships the one true God.
If you're just joining us, Andra Watkins is our guest, a New York Times bestselling author. She has a Substack. I highly encourage you to subscribe for such a time as this. And she has written extensively about Project 2025 as well, and how that will change our country. Russ Vought, one of the premier authors of Project 2025, now working his way to get a spot within the Trump administration. And he's not the only one either, right, Andra? There are more of Project 2025 proponents now who are getting placed within the Trump administration.
There are numerous ones now. Kevin Roberts, who was head of the Heritage Foundation, is part of the administration now. Stephen Miller wasn't part of the Heritage Foundation, but worked closely with them with his own group that contributed to Project 2025. And he's a huge architect of everything that's happening right now. So there are a lot of people who are involved with the creation of it, because what a lot of people don't understand is the Heritage Foundation spearheaded Project 2025, but there were 100 or so far-right think tanks and nonprofits that contributed people and resources and research. Tom Homan, who's the head of the deportation task force, was one of those people. So, and he worked for a small, a nonprofit that has been designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So before he came into the administration. So he's an example of the kind of people that worked on Project 2025. And it wasn't just the Heritage Foundation. It was this diaspora, this 100 or more group of organizations that contributed resources and money and people.
It seems to me, too, that the one tie that binds these three separate groups of Christian nationalism is they really favor the Old Testament over the New Testament. When I hear them talk about instituting biblical law, they want the biblical law from the Old Testament to rule our country.
And you are not being hyperbolic to say that. In Rolling Stone magazine 3 years ago, they ran a story with video of two white Christian nationalist men talking about bringing back Old Testament biblical punishments for their version of sin. We also have Joel Webbin, who's a Christian nationalist pastor in Texas, who said just a few months ago that women would stop accusing men of rape if we publicly stoned a few of them to death.
Oh,
which is which is one of the things in the Old Testament. That's a punishment for adultery and rape that is called for in the Old Testament. So there is a faction of Christian nationalists who very much believe that Old Testament law literally should apply to our nation's laws.
So,
And they're the same people who got angry when Bishop Budd recommended that people be like Jesus. So a lot of these people parrot, in a lukewarm, mealy-mouthed fashion, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. But they really, really love them some Old Testament vengeful, hateful God.
we've said this for a long time. They love Smitey God.
Yeah, they love Smitey God. Yes,
they
do.
love Smitey God, and the New Testament. Yeah, some nice suggestions, but not really. If they're gonna embrace the Old Testament, doesn't that make them Jewish?
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, parts of the old books. There are books in the Old Testament that are from the Torah.
The first 5 books.
Right. And one of my readers sent me a wonderful link today. I'll send it to you, Jane, afterwards, about a guy in Ohio who's now proposed a 10 Commandments bill. And so the reporter actually, 10 Commandments in Schools bill, and the reporter actually went through and was like, which version of the 10 Commandments are we supposed to use here? These Christian nationalists like the King James Version, but then let's look at other versions and what they say.
We're going to continue our conversation with Andra Watkins. Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the vast, statewide, countrywide. You can hear us globally if you got the app Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back.
I'm living with something that just isn't fair. And who's not really who am I to blame? I'm going off the rails on a crazy train. I'm going off the rails on a crazy train.
Now you can't turn. No, I don't understand if something happened with my headphones. They're charged, they're not dead, but they're just, and they say they're connecting, but they're just not working on any device right now. He says go to settings on StreamYard and click it. I don't see where here. I'm regretting this, but I'll try.
Paperback writer.
Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calviente on the board. Coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. After the 11 o'clock news, we're going to talk about the race for Wisconsin State School Superintendent. One of the candidates, I think, has an interesting background, so we will kick that around a little bit. Right now, joining us, New York Times bestselling author Andra Watkins has a great Substack called For Such a Time as This is our guest, and we're talking about some of the Trump administration new officials being brought in who have very strong ties to the Christian nationalist movement. And I think one of the best reactions to that is how Donald Trump and his supporters reacted to the inauguration prayer that was a couple of weeks ago. We didn't talk about this at the time, but the outcry after this was mind-blowing. So the pastor of the inauguration prayer service urged Donald Trump to have mercy on immigrants and transgender children. Quote, "In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land." The right freaked out. It was incredible.
Yes, and it was a two-pronged freak out from my point of view. One of the stories that I told recently was about Anita Bryant, who was a big Christian nationalist woman who visited my church when I was a child.
Oh
And
boy, look
and
at
my
you.
yeah. And my pastor very much believed, and a lot of people, men in this group, in this movement, do believe that women should never address men from a pulpit. So they had her come to the church, but she could only sing and tell little ditties between the songs. And then the pastor interviewed her and very tightly controlled how much she talked because she wasn't supposed to address men from the pulpit. So apply that to Bishop Budd giving her sermon and her prayer on the day of the inauguration. And she's a woman pastor who a lot of these Christian nationalists don't believe we should have, both in the Catholic and Protestant versions of Christian nationalism.
Yep.
She's confronting a man, which in that world you don't ever do that. The men are always right.
No matter what.
And no matter what, they're always right. You don't ever confront them, especially if you're female. And she's explaining the Bible to them perhaps better than they understand it. You know, Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of me, the least person, you do to me. And, you know, in those circles amongst themselves, a lot of them say things like Jesus was a wimp and Jesus isn't somebody, you know, he wasn't strong and he wasn't macho and he didn't do, you know, all the right things. And so that's why Old Testament Smighty God is so attractive to them, because that is a masculine picture of how they think masculinity is supposed to look. Very aggressive, very confrontational, very macho. And so that's what appeals to them. So she stepped into a multiple of things because she chose to speak the truth from the Word of God as she interprets it.
I appreciate that. That's an angle that I had never even considered, Andra, but you're so right. How dare a woman tell men that they were wrong?
I just had a question, and I mean this with all due respect to the process of all this, but who allowed her to do that? Like, at what, like, who got fired for suggesting her? Because by all accounts, you should be able to research what pastors and what people talk about, especially at that level. They had to have known she was going to come and do that. Maybe they wanted the attention so they could get the
who knows
the headlines.
Who knows?
But it was after it all happened. Like, how did she make it to that pulpit?
Well, it's her church. But
it's
that's
her
her church.
I guess so, yeah.
And that's where this ceremony has traditionally been held. So I think that's why. But to see the reaction from some men in, again, Christian nationalists. And I went back and looked at some of their preaching because everybody was all, she's talking politics from the pulpit and that's so wrong. Oh my God.
Adorable.
The screeching hypocrisy is unbelievable. It really
Right.
is.
Right, because some of these pastors, all they do is talk about politics from the pulpit,
Yes.
and God is not God. God is a man that they worship. So, that is what the Christian nationalist movement has become.
Real quickly, because we're just about out of time. This just happened. This happened this morning. This is from The Independent. Trump says he's ordering Attorney General Pam Bondi now to target anti-Christian bias with a religious liberty task force.
Right. And that is, there is a huge persecution complex in the Christian nationalist movement. But persecuting a Christian nationalist is as simple as saying, I don't agree with you that the Bible says that.
That's persecution.
That's persecution to them. So pushing back on anything they say is persecution to them. And people do need to understand that, because there is serious religious persecution that does happen. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but saying I disagree with you is not persecution.
Subscribe to her on Substack for such a time as this. Read her books. New York Times bestselling author Andra Watkins. Thank you so very much, Andra. We will absolutely have you back. Take care. News is coming up next. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
I'll be writing more in a week or two. I can make it longer if you like the style. I can change it around and I want to be a paperback writer. Paperback writer. If you really like it, you can have the rights. You can make $1 million for your overnight. If you must return it, you can send it here. But I need a break.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. It is the same number, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. If you do not have the Civic Media app, you should get it.
Download it right now.
Download it. It's completely free. Go to your app store, look for Civic, CIVIC, Civic Media. Download our free Civic Media app. You can sign up for news updates in your local community. We have news reporters all over the state. So whether you're in Amory or here in Racine or possibly Oshkosh, you can sign up and have news that is curated to your community.
What was the town that we thought was Muscadet?
It's Muscadet.
Muscadet. What did we?
It's spelled Muscota.
Muscota. Yeah. Well, I always say Shawano.
It's Shawano.
I know, but you can. But if you live in those places,
you can get news about your community.
Heck yeah.
In Muscadet. So download the Civic Media app today. It is completely free. Coming up in a little bit, we'll talk weather with Brittney Merlot, Civic Media meteorologist for weather and wine. We do have some weather coming in on Saturday that's it looks like it's going to affect the entire state. So stick around for that. 11:30, Acme Packing Company sports guru Paul Noonan will be here. We'll talk about the big game on Sunday. Of course, we're talking about the Puppy Bowl. And then we'll wrap up the show as we always do.
Bark.
This shouldn't be a thing. How long has Louis DeJoy been in charge? Edition.
It's such a lot.
I know. It doesn't exactly flow, but that's what we came up with. That will wrap up the show around 11:51. In less than 2 weeks, we will be heading to the polls. You can actually early vote right now if you haven't done so yet. And on the ballot for February 18th, we have 3 people running to head the Department of Public Instruction in Wisconsin. Among them, education consultant Brittney Kinzer. However, according to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Kelly Meyerhofer with the byline, Kinzer has never held a Wisconsin teacher's license. Her administrator's license lapsed last summer. Her campaign says it doesn't matter because the state's superintendent job doesn't require office holders to have an educator's license. Her people say Brittney Kinzer is more than qualified to be superintendent, 25 years of experience as a special ed teacher, principal, educational consultant, and CEO of a Milwaukee education advocacy nonprofit. I think it's important to note that education advocacy group was pro-charter and voucher schools.
Yeah.
So this is my question.
Okay.
Do we want a big proponent of voucher and charter schools to be running the public education system in Wisconsin? It seems like she has bias towards charter and voucher schools.
It definitely
Why
seems...
would we put her in charge of the Department of Public Education to determine what our public schools should do, unless it's just to disband?
Yeah. Will she do to the DPI what Trump is trying to do to the Department of Education right now? I mean, it definitely seems like there's an agenda there. And yeah, so yeah, you don't have to be a licensed teacher to run the DPI. Guess what? Anyone in the building we're in right now can be appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States because you don't have to be a judge or a lawyer. But you know what? I want someone with good experience, with a mission of good education for kids, not pushing the agenda of increasing the second school system that I'm already paying for.
Exactly. We are paying for 2 school systems.
Yep. And let no one tell you differently.
Yeah. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. We are absolutely funding 2 separate school systems, one for public education, the other for charter and voucher schools, which are private and which, if I understand correctly, do not have to follow the same standards or results as our public schools do. And yet they are getting our tax dollars.
Yes, they are. And there are fabulous ways to wiggle out of having the students you don't like and keeping the money. I mean, you could honestly talk about this for hours, and people can with a great deal of intellect. But what I'm saying right now is what you're saying. This person seems to be pushing an agenda that is to essentially strip away our public schools, demolish them down to the ground, and put all the kids in some sort of private voucher, which
Religious.
which you will pay for, which I don't know if you know this, but they're not cheap, one. And two, I don't know if you agree with them either. Like, you agree with these I mean, I went to Catholic school. That's fine.
So did I.
But I don't think every kid belongs in Catholic school.
And as you said, too, and I've seen other state lawmakers point this out, and as you just pointed out, voucher schools and charter schools can refuse any kid they want.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of hand.
Yes. Yep.
Or they can accept that student, take the taxpayer money, and then expel the student.
Exactly.
And keep the money.
Yes. That is a big deal. That is something that you have. And what do they base it on? Handbooks, guidelines, whatever. They're a private school. They don't have to answer to Madison.
They don't have to answer to anybody.
But most importantly, they don't have to answer to DPI because they are private. So, hey, does your kid want to come to our school via vouchers? That's great. Oh, is your son queer? Well, he can't stay, but I'm going to keep that check. And that's taxpayer money. That is your money.
It's our money. Brittney Kinzer's two challengers, incumbent Jill Underly and Sauk Prairie School District Superintendent Jeff Wright, say her expired licenses raise some questions about whether or not she is fit to lead Wisconsin's in a public instruction. Again, if I understand correctly, her last couple of jobs were advocating for charter schools and voucher schools, which is why I question why she would be a good fit to run our Department of Public Instruction, which handles public schools. 855-752-4842. If you would like to join us, Ollie from the Northwoods is on the line. Good morning, Ollie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, I just want to make a comment that Trump is now trying to do away with the Department of Education, and he's saying, well, the states should be in control. But the problem is that everybody in the state doesn't have the option of having a voucher program.
Right.
Yeah.
We need the public schools, and if the state is putting control, that is going to be just like the abortion thing. Women's rights are going to be taken away. Well, if states control of education, children's rights are going to be taken away. Children who have difficulties in school, who may need the disabilities, extra help.
Right.
Their rights are going to be taken away. We have to speak up, and we can't allow that to happen.
Really appreciate that, Ollie. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for checking in. Yeah, I agree. Again, why would we put someone in charge of public schools who advocates for private, charter, and voucher schools? That doesn't make any sense to me.
And I know that if you go to this week's episodes of Up North News Radio with Pat Kreitlow, you can hear him interviewing both Jill Underly, who is the incumbent, as well as Jeff Wright, who is challenging in the primary. Both sat down and talked to Pat for an interview. As far as I know, what's her name again? Her name
Brittney.
is Brittney has not responded or canceled interview requests because my guess is this is a hard agenda to defend. And I just want to remind people, if you don't believe us, I'm going to put in the show notes today a webpage from the Wisconsin Education Network that breaks down county by county, community, and school district how your taxpayer funding dollars are going to private vouchers. It will tell you how much of that money, and you will be shocked, I'm sure. Burlington, not that big, almost $8 million of taxpayer money goes to vouchers in Burlington.
That's a lot of money.
That's a ton of money, ton of taxpayer money.
And again, they do not have to report or follow the same guidelines that our public schools do.
Nope.
Doesn't seem like there's any oversight.
I'd say yes. I say little to none.
Little to none.
It's decorative.
And as we've got Rob texting in, my concern too, and as Ollie pointed out, rural areas don't have that many options for schools.
Yep.
And in many instances in our small towns in Wisconsin, the public school is it.
Yep.
And the public school is the center of the community. They don't have options. They don't have 3 other options
Yeah.
for charter schools or voucher schools if you're living in a town of 1,200.
Yeah. Don't worry, they'll build one, I guess. I have no idea, but it's just
Well,
just
if they're going to allow people to make money off of it, and they're going to privatize all of our schools, then maybe you will get a few pop up in some of these smaller communities if they can make money.
Exactly.
But you're going to have enough kids to make it worth their while.
Do you honestly know what this sounds like to me? A weird version of the private prison system. We're going to privatize our schools. We're going to stuff as many kids in there as possible. The more kids, the more money. The education, that's like 4th, 5th on the list. We don't have to worry about that. But that taxpayer money is going to go to real good private schools.
We're talking about Brittney Kinzer and the other 2 people running to head the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. The primary, less than 2 weeks away, February 18th. It's going to be here before you know it. Take part. Get involved.
Yes.
Neither of us have kids.
Nope.
I don't care. I will be voting and casting my ballot in this election.
Yep.
I care about other people's kids.
I do too. And if my tax dollars are going to go to education, I want to go to good education available to all without the hoops of vouchers or charter schools. I want them to go to good public schools. And some people say that's impossible at this point. I don't think so.
I don't think it is either.
No.
When we return, Brittney Merlot will be here with a little weather and wine. We have some snow coming in, and it sounds like it's going to be affecting most of Wisconsin on Saturday. Prepare yourself. I hope you didn't put the shovel away just yet. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
She gets mad and she starts to cry. She takes a swing, man. She can't help. She don't mean no harm. She just don't know what else to do about it.
Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, resident young person Calvin on the board, coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform shedding more listeners than a husky blowing its winter coat. She joins us every Thursday at this time for a little weather and wine. Civic Media meteorologist Brittney Merlot is here. Good morning, lady. How are you?
Good morning, Jane. I'm fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Wonderful, except for, and I know you're happy about this because that's
Saturday?
fine. No judgment. No judgment. But yes, you're happy about Saturday because it looks like the whole state's going to get snow, right?
Pretty much. I would say maybe the exception of the state line, very, very south along the Illinois border, you might just get a trace to a half an inch. That kind of includes Madison, too. So very, very dry air on that area. But the rest of the state, oh, absolutely, we're going to get hit. Probably the biggest storm of the season.
Seriously. And what time is it going to start on Saturday, and who's going to get it the worst or the best, depending upon how you want to look at it?
All right, so this storm is going to be moving into the northwestern areas. This will be around midnight as we push into Saturday. So overnight, it is going to be spreading widespread. It'll start off light, and it'll start to ramp up, though, throughout the afternoon and wind down by the evening. It looks like probably by dark, it should stop. But this means all day Saturday, the roads are going to be absolutely terrible for a majority of the state. And the temperatures are going to be in the teens to 20s. So it's going to be a light, fluffy type of snow that's going to be blowing and drifting around, recovering roads. And also at those temperatures, salt doesn't like to work too much.
It's too cold.
Yeah. It's going to be
Well,
problems.
that will make my husband happy because he's one of those people that will bring out the leaf blower.
I love it.
I know.
Why
And
did I
made a
ever
video.
think of that?
But he's tried that a couple times when it's the wrong kind of snow. It's like, yeah, you're going to stand there all day. That's not going to
funny.
help you. But
That's
it sounds like Saturday it might be the kind of stuff where you can just, blow it off a little bit.
Yes.
What a
Good for clearing,
snowblower.
but also, a pain when the winds are a little feisty too.
Yeah.
They're not looking too bad, not like today. Today's the worst day for the winds. So
Well, Robin Tigerton said the wind machine is kicking up in Tigerton area. I bet many snowplow operators are excited about Saturday to make some money plowing snow.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
yes, and we have also got the snowmobile trails opening as well. I think Oneida County opens tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And then with the added snowfall, I would figure a ton more are going to be following by Sunday.
What do you have any guesses on snow totals, Brittany?
Yeah, so we're looking at a good 5 to 8 inches. And that looks pretty much from, I would say, the Eau Claire area, pretty much from Minneapolis, Eau Claire, down to La Crosse. And it shoots across the state into Wausau, the Dells area, and kind of continues into the Fox Valley. Green Bay's in the target, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, you're right on that line. And of course, these systems keep wanting to slide a little bit south. So Milwaukee, I would probably keep a heads up just in case your total's in Grace.
All right.
Well, now I'm going to have to go grocery shopping tomorrow
Oh,
because that's what's going to happen tomorrow is everyone's going to go to the store because if you're not going to be able to get out on Saturday and then the big game is on Sunday, so you got to have the meatballs ready.
that's true. I would go to the store today. Beat the crowd.
Ooh, that's a very good idea, Brittany Merle.
It is.
Just have
She's
them
a smarty.
just have them deliver it to your house.
Brittney Merlot is our guest. She's Civic Media meteorologist, talking a little bit about the winter storm we have coming up on Saturday. And I did want to ask you this, Brittany. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but Elon Musk's minions barged into NOAA yesterday, just like they did the Treasury Department, and essentially said, give us all your information. I just want to talk to you, a meteorologist, about how important the data that you get from the National Weather Service. How important is that data? What does that do for your job?
Oh, everything for my job. It's how I decipher what I'm going to tell you, how things are changing, what we're looking forward to. I look at this constantly to see how many snowstorms do we get. Like right now, we're short 4 storms. 4 of them have just gone MIA. I would not know that if I didn't have the data from the National Weather Service and NOAA. We would be sitting here like, yeah, it kind of seems like a little bit less. But I can actually give you the facts, the stats. I can go off old storms, see how they progressed. What did they do? Did they shrink? Did it explode? Who got hit the hardest? Was it a wintry mix? Did ice come from that? last night. We really, really, really look into these storms and that data, and it is going to cripple the industry.
I mean, it's okay. I was going to say it's safe to say that if the information was either privatized, made to be bought, or just being changed to, align with agendas, that's not going to make your job easier or help the people anymore by doing those things.
No, they're taking away, key things that we need. It's data. Why
Yeah.
are you messing with it? And if you're going to downsize, why are you downsizing from the top? Everyone's relying on that. Those people
Yeah.
are needed. I don't know. It's a shame. I'm upset.
Well,
Yeah.
Project 2025 always talked about privatizing the National Weather Service, and we talked about paying for your forecasts and things like that. That might be coming. This doesn't seem like a positive, but we'll keep our eyes on it. And for right now, we know you can count on her data. Brittney Merlot, Civic Media meteorologist, Snow Queen, as I understand, Pat Kreitlow
Yes.
calls you in the morning. So on
Yes,
Up
he
North
does.
DJ
News.
Flip Mix.
That too.
Thanks a lot, Brittany. We will see you next week. Stay tuned. We have news coming up next. And when we return, we're talking all things sports from the Acme Packing Company's Paul Noonan. Of course, the big game on Sunday. There's also, that football game, but the Puppy Bowl is on Sunday. And there were some big trades with the Milwaukee Bucks. Not everybody is happy. That's all coming up. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Mock, Sweet Calby on the board. Coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Coming up in just a little bit around 11:51, we will wrap up the show with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it's the How Long Has Louis DeJoy Been in Charge Anyway edition. Doesn't exactly flow that well, but
I feel like you'd be like,
and you'll get it when we get there. So stick around for that. Right now, though, he joins us every other Thursday from the ACME Packing Company. Joining us today on the phone, Paul Noonan. Good morning, sir, from some mysterious, undisclosed location.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm actually at McCormick Place in downtown Chicago, the convention center. So
Nice.
I have found myself a tucked away tiny corner, and should be good.
Nice quiet corner. Lovely. Well, the big news this morning, Paul, obviously, are the trades among the Bucks. So
Yeah,
the Bucks trade Chris Middleton to the Wizards.
they did. And I think this is probably a sad day for all Bucks fans. It is for me. Chris Middleton is legitimately one of the greatest players in franchise history. He is a leader in most major categories, including three-pointers made, with top 3 in minutes, and more than anything, was legitimately the hero of their title run. Giannis is, of course, the bedrock on which everything else is built. But when Giannis was unable to go, Chris Middleton saved the day. He is the second star, and you always need 2 on this team. And this is one of those moves where I sort of understand from a logical perspective why it happened. But I do wonder if the Bucks are sort of misjudging their window a little bit with this. So for those who haven't heard about it, they traded Chris Middleton to the Wizards for Kyle Kuzma, who is a good player, a young player, plays the same position as Middleton. What he brings to the table is youth, health, availability, and hopefully can blend with Damian Lillard and Giannis to sort of get them back on track, as now they fall into the 5th spot in the playoffs. This is really a trade where they got someone who's worse than Middleton, kind of across the board. But Chris Middleton had ankle surgery on both of his ankles in the offseason. He really hasn't recovered properly. He's an older player, and he'll probably never be as good as he was again. But when he is on the court, he's better. He just is. So this is trading some efficiency for some availability. And it was a pretty steep price to pay. You send a beloved player away for a guy who is also a little bit on the weird side. Kuzma is a big personality. He has an interesting fashion sense. If you Google him and the word fashion, you'll get some fun stuff. But this does keep the Bucks window nominally maybe open a little longer. But I don't know. I have some concerns on this whole thing. I don't know that the Bucks really understand what they are at this point, and this might be kind of a Band-Aid on a broken bone. So sad, paid a lot. I also should mention there were some financial considerations the Bucks were working on too. The NBA salary cap is 10 times as complicated as any other salary cap in any sport, including the NFL's, which is difficult in and of itself.
Right.
There are 2 levels that you may go over the salary cap that are known as aprons. And it's important to understand this because there's new CBA, and the CBA used to not punish you that harshly if you went over it, but the Bucks have been over the second apron, and they needed to cut something like $6 to $7 million to get under it. The penalty for not doing so is that their first round pick in 2032 becomes frozen, and that may seem like forever and never going to happen. But why it's important is you can't trade it if it's frozen, and the NBA trades happen all the time, and if you can't move picks, it really hurts your roster building. So they had to cut that much money to get that pick unfrozen, or at least have the possibility of having it unfrozen. There's other consequences too. If they were over the apron too many times, that pick would become a 30th or worse pick when it actually came up. By doing this, now they can trade picks again, and they can make other moves again. They can do some salary consolidation that they couldn't before. They basically escape a lot of the really heavy penalties that are imposed upon teams over cap. So they were looking at a million ways to get under this apron. I know trading Pat Connaughton was one of the potential things, but you need to have somebody willing to take him in his salary too. And, Middleton, for all of his injuries and lack of availability, is a good veteran presence and a star that you can at least do some selling on. And so that is what came and that is what went. So the Bucks will go forward a little bit younger, a little bit healthier. But when Middleton's out there versus Kuzma being out there, not quite as efficient.
I think they need to make those trade rules even more complicated, Paul, because that's not nearly what a mess.
It's such a mess.
Seriously, Calvin has been waiting anxiously because he has many thoughts about this. Calvin's a big Bucks fan. What did you want to say about this, Calvin?
Well, I guess I agree with Paul that if you take the names and the emotions and the connections out of it on paper, it sort of borderline makes sense.
You sound very convinced by
Wow,
that, Calvin.
you should run for political office.
But
that's a perfect summation, honestly.
but when you go deeper than that, Chris Middleton, he is a Milwaukee Buck. So I know it's a business. I know these things happen all the time, but it really just feels disrespectful what we did to him, not only the compensation we got for him, but also where we sent him. We sent him to the Washington Wizards, which is a struggling franchise that will always be a struggling franchise, apparently. And it's where veterans go to die.
Oh,
It was disrespectful from an
wrong.
organizational standpoint.
Yeah. By the way, dovetailing into that a little bit and just how depressing the Wizards are. One of the issues with getting Kuzma back specifically is he had one really good season as a rookie, and he's kind of tailed off as a Wizard. He was a Laker to start off. He ended up on the Wizards, and it kind of looks like he's quit. And I think it's an open question as to whether he can regain his form from a few years ago versus the sort of poor stat lines he's put up recently. He has in the past been a 36% three-point shooter. He's really declined. He's especially declined defensively. And the Wizards kind of do that to guys. So they also form bad habits. I think it's an open question as to whether we get good Kuzma or bad Kuzma. And it really is doing Middleton dirty. That is not a fun place to play. It is a bunch of fairly untalented young players, rookies, and they don't seem to have a good plan there. I don't think Middleton will be there that long. I do think he'll end up being a trade ship after a little while, but he's going to be there for a while. And he really is a Milwaukee Buck, and that was not a nice thing to do to that guy.
Just like I'm forgetting his name right now. He went to the Celtics, but the outpouring of almost mourning on social media for this, because he and Giannis were friends. They had a great relationship. They really worked together well on the court.
Yeah.
And my question is, if he's this many years into his NBA career, how long does he have to hold on to the Wizards to be traded to maybe a better team? Or will he just retire?
Well, that even happened. Yeah.
Will he just retire?
So I do think Chris Middleton's longevity is probably an open question. Ankles do not tend to age well on anybody, and especially as you get older. But I think if he can just hang on for a year, he'll move either actually this off season or at the next deadline. I don't think he'll be a Wizard very long, one way or another. And if he can hold on, I don't think that he'll be there very long.
Well, he's obviously going to be remembered with a great deal of affection here in Milwaukee. And I read something briefly this morning that said that even Giannis called him the GOAT.
Yeah. And those two respect each other a ton. And I think, Giannis is a very smart man. He understands that while he's got his title, he would not have that title without Chris Middleton. They would not have won. They would have dropped that series a couple times.
Calvin?
Well, I just wanted to relate it back to Greg's point about Drew Holiday. As sad as it was to see Drew Holiday leave, this is like so much deeper because Drew Holiday, as much as we loved having him in Milwaukee, he never totally felt like a Buck in the same way as Chris Middleton, just in the sense that he wasn't here for as long and he was traded in with the clear purpose of he's the piece we need to win a championship. And we also set him up very nicely.
Yeah, true.
And he got to go to a contending team.
Yeah, very much so. Some would say better than the Bucks in certain points.
Yes. Indeed, that's true. I agree with that. Like Middleton's a long time Buck. You know, Drew Holiday was a very important player as well for the team, but this is like as core a player as the franchise has ever had,
Yeah.
and you know, a very storied one. Like we've had Ray Allen, we've had Kareem, we've had a ton of great players play for the Bucks over time. Very few have been as successful and played as long as Middleton. That list is like 3 guys long, and he's probably at the top of it, other than Giannis.
Well, we wish him well.
Yep.
Absolutely wish Chris Middleton well and hope he does well. If you're just joining us, by the way, Paul Noonan is here, the Acme Packing Company sports guru, and he joins us every Thursday to talk all things sports. Before we talk about the important game on Sunday, the Puppy Bowl, let's talk about the matchup between the Eagles and the Chiefs.
We've seen the Super Bowl already, and I was really hoping for any other Super Bowl to have happened. And I do, so greatness is fine, but greatness actually, I feel like, does get a little bit boring after a while. I feel like the Patriots dynasty got a little boring for people after a while when they had the greatest coach and the greatest quarterback. And the Chiefs are really threatening that at this point, who also have the greatest coach and the greatest quarterback of modern times. It should be a pretty close matchup, but this is not like the most explosive offenses. It's one of the more down offenses the Chiefs have possessed. It's very pass heavy, as you would expect. But a lot of their stars moved on. It's kind of old man Kelsey and Mahomes and a bunch of okay guys. And the Eagles are not an explosive offense. I know they lit up Washington because they can run the ball really well, and Washington can't stop the run. But their passing attack is very medium, and it's hard to run the ball against Kansas City. This is sort of oddly a defense versus defense Super Bowl. I don't wager on sports myself, but I do like the under in this game. I think the Chiefs will have a really good shot to shut the Eagles' offense down. They're very, very good at playing, at stopping guys who excel at man. The Chiefs are very good at stopping that. And I mean, forced to pick a team, it's hard to bet against Mahomes and Reed in a clutch game. They just come up, they come up big every single time they're put in the situation, in the Chiefs era anyway. And I do think it'll be kind of a grind game. So I've looked forward to Super Bowls more than this one. I wish somebody would knock those guys off.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a really defensive focused game.
I mean, well, that could make for exciting stuff then. I mean, if it's a low scoring, high defense game, that can make it fun to watch, and not just for the commercials. But the question I have is if Kansas City wins, will Kelsey retire? I mean, that'll be what, his 3rd or 4th Super Bowl ring? And you know, You just referred to him as old man Kelsey, so it might be time for him to join his brother full time in endorsing everything that's on television.
It might be. Everything he's indicated so far is that he would like to come back again, and he's such a clever, like quick tight end that he's definitely lost some speed since over the last 2 years for sure. You can see him not as fast, but he's still good. So I think he's not really in it. He doesn't have to. If he wants to come back for another run, he totally can. He is a clever route runner, and those guys age well. But it might be the last we see of Travis Kelsey, but I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back for one more run.
Gotcha.
Oh, just about out of time, Paul. Real quickly, the Lombardi Trophy is up for grabs this weekend. So are you leaning Team Rough or Team Fluff this year?
Always Team Fluff.
Team Fluff.
The cute ones, they take you by surprise.
Go.
The big ones, you expect them to.
I heard Team Fluff is doing the drugs.
Go Team Fluff.
You heard field. You want the small quick. You don't want the big lumbering.
Paul Noonan knows his Puppy Bowl, man. I'm telling you. Thank you so much, Paul. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, all.
Stay with us. We're going to return and wrap it up with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. You are listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenhoff, coming to you live from our studio at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Tomorrow is Friday, so Dan Schaefer will be here, Civic Media's political editor, and also the author and founder of the Recombobulation Area. He will join us right after 11 o'clock. He has a new column out about Donald Trump's victory and how he think the Republicans were able to achieve that victory, kind of changing their tactics a little bit. So I'm sure we will be breaking that down with Dan Schaefer tomorrow. In hour number 1 tomorrow, Randy Manner is going to join us.
Yeah.
He is a retired Major General in the United States Army. We talked a lot to him leading up to the election. And now that Donald Trump has been in office for all of 2.5 weeks and he is dismantling, it looks like, numerous agencies, including this USAID. And I'm sure Randy worked with many agencies providing assistance overseas during his 30-year career in the Army. And we're going to talk about that with him, what this means, and which country does this benefit? If we remove ourselves from offering aid in these instances, who's going to move in and be the good guy if we're not going to be?
Yeah.
And it's China.
Oh, boy.
So he will be joining us tomorrow right after the 10:30 news. I hope you can join us for that. Don't forget, you can always listen to us as a podcast. If you missed the show, just go to civicmedia.us. At the very top, it says shows. Click on shows. Go to Matenaer On Air. And that will take you to like 100 previous episodes.
Yeah, you'll get quite a few months back. And you can also go to your podcast distribution center of choice and download it and subscribe to the show as a podcast.
That'd be great.
You can review us, give us 5 stars if we deserve it. Love to hear from you. Drop a note. Join us.
It is 11:54, Calvin. That means it's time for
This Shouldn't Be a Thing.
Today, it is the How Long Has Louis DeJoy Been in Charge edition of This Shouldn't Be a Thing. By the way, if you ever have a thing you think should not be, send it into Greg and me at janesays@civicmedia.us. This from the Independent. Byline for Sidney Page from the Washington Post. Headline reads, Michigan woman receives 100-year-old postcard in the mail. We've all seen mail get delayed for weeks, but 100 years, that's really something. When Brittney Keach checked her mailbox one morning, she found the usual junk mail. Also included in that, a tattered and time-worn postcard. The 30-year-old from Belding, Michigan said, at first I didn't think much about it other than it looked old. Then I took a closer look. She spotted a 1-cent George Washington stamp, postmarked October 29th of 1920. She got this 100-year-old piece of mail on September 8th. On the front of the postcard, it's Halloween related. Which would you rather be, WITCH? Which would you rather be, a pumpkinhead or a witch? She said it appears to be addressed to a Mrs. Roy McQueen. So she's trying to find people who this might belong to. The postcard was signed by Flossie. Doesn't get better than that. The postcard signed by Flossie Burgess.
Oh,
Flossie Burgess. She's decided she will try to reunite the long-lost postcard with the family to whom it was originally sent. She did post this on Facebook. She quickly found out that others were interested in uncovering the origins of this and how 100 years later it ended up in the right mailbox.
yeah.
It was the right address.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple 100 years late.
Well, better late than never. It gets there eventually. Hopefully, it's not like the ingredients to an antidote.
True.
Yeah.
Or medication.
Yeah.
But I guess that's Louis DeJoy's new slogan for the post office. It might not be on time, but it'll get there in 100 years.
We'll get it to you.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah, just be patient.
Wraps up today's edition of
This shouldn't be a thing.
Coming up next, we have news on the way, followed by Todd Alba from noon to 2 p.m. in hour number 2. Like we do, Todd tries to lighten it up a little bit with what's worse. You never know what it's going to be. It's always a lot of fun. Join Todd for that. Maggie Dawn takes over from 2 to 4. Dom Salvia, 4 to 6. Pete Schwaba, you might be pinch hitting for tonight.
Maybe. We'll
Maybe.
see. We'll see.
6 to 8 p.m. with Night Lights. Pat Kreitlow, of course, Up North News Radio gets things started early from 6 to 8 a.m. And then Earl Ingram right before us from 8 a.m. until 10. We will be back with you tomorrow morning. Thank you, Greg and Calvin and all of our engineers. Without you, nothing works. And thank you most of all for calling and for texting and for listening. It absolutely means the world. I hope you find some joy today and you have the chance to share it. Stay close. News next on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you tomorrow.